All right, let's jump right into this explainer about the fascinating life, mystical miracles, and enduring legacy of the 16th century saint Sri Paramesvari das Thakura. Whether you are deeply familiar with the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition or just discovering this rich history, the incredible details preserved from over 500 years ago are absolutely going to captivate you. Let's unpack his story step by step. So, what exactly connects a sacred tree that blooms just once a year, a resurrected chanting jackal, and a 16th century physician? I know, it sounds like the setup to an ancient riddle, doesn't it? But believe it or not, these are actual historical fragments surrounding one remarkable figure whose influence is still deeply felt today. These clues lead us straight to a hidden temple in Antpur today, and let me tell you, it is full of intriguing and miraculous anomalies. Picture this. Just outside the gates, his sacred tomb, or samadhi, rests peacefully right between two bakul trees. Nearby, there's a kadamba tree that astonishingly produces only one single flower each year, which is then used to worship the deities. But perhaps the most mysterious anomaly is the altar itself. Today, the deities of Radha, Krishna, and Balarama actually sit together on the same throne. According to the texts, this mixes conflicting spiritual moods, a concept known as rasabhasa. Because a highly realized saint wouldn't typically arrange them this way, scholars actually believe this current setup happened long after his time. Section 1. Who was Paramesvari Thakura? So, here's the crucial point. He came from a family of Vajas, physicians. And the area he lived in? Well, back then, the village of Antpur was known as Bishkala, and it definitely wasn't the peaceful sanctuary you'd find there today. It was this dense, overgrown forest covered in rattan trees and notoriously known as a major haven for miscreants and bandits. Imagine trying to set up a beacon of spiritual light in the middle of a literal outlaw forest. This really illustrates his deep theological significance. According to the foundational texts, Paramesvari Gokula was the fifth of the Dwadasha Gobala, the 12 cowherd boys of Vrindavana who appeared to assist in the divine pastimes. Specifically, he's identified as the incarnation of the cowherd friend named Arjuna. And just to clarify, that's entirely distinct from the famous Pandava warrior Arjuna. In this specific spiritual mood, he served as the very life and soul of Lord Nityananda, constantly raising a joyous commotion in his devotion. Check out this surviving fragment of his poetry, discovered right at the Antwerp temple. It bridges this massive 500-year gap, showing us a super relatable spiritual awakening. He openly admits his past obsessions, writing, "I was like that filthy worm who obtained great pleasure in being obsessed with money. But by your causeless mercy, all my false ego and arrogance has now been completely destroyed." Wow, it's such a powerful, humbling admission, right? It just reminds us that even highly revered saints went through profound, highly personal transformations. Section 2. Service to the Divine. This timeline really highlights his incredible journey as a dedicated servant. We're talking days escorting the great Sri Srinivasa Acharya directly to Jahnava Mata, weeks spent transporting the sacred deity of Radharani all the way to Vrindavana, months attending the historically massive festival of Katuri organized by Jahnava Das Thakura, and ultimately, years spent establishing a permanent preaching center right back in those dangerous, bandit-filled forests of Antipur. He absolutely did not choose the easy path. It's honestly profound that Srimati Jahnava Devi specifically chose him for this monumental task. She explicitly instructed him to settle in Antpur and propagate the service of Radha Gopinatha. But get this, she didn't just give him verbal orders. She personally entrusted him with the original worshipable deities of Lord Nityananda himself. Giving him that immense level of divine responsibility speaks volumes about the absolute trust she had in him to bring light to such a dark place. Section 3. The Chanting Jackal Miracle. Now notice the incredible contrast here. On one side, you have these deeply envious locals, while Paramesvari was completely absorbed, dancing in a god-intoxicated state during a sacred Sankirtana festival. These enraged locals actually picked up a dead jackal from the road and threw it right into the middle of the devotees. Most of us would be furious or completely disgusted, right? But Paramesvari das Thakura, no anger whatsoever. He only felt this deep, genuine sadness for the unfortunate dead creature. And what happens next is just astonishing. The historical records tell us that with a single merciful glance, he didn't just bring the dead jackal back to life, the revived animal actually trotted out of the hall chanting the holy names. I mean, you can just imagine the scene. This completely bewildered the troublemakers and they immediately bolted. It's such a brilliant testament to how pure compassion can completely disarm hate and ignorance.
Section 4. Experiencing the legacy today.
So let's look at this really fascinating piece of sociopolitical history, the continuing tradition of the Kunti staff. Originally, the Kunti was an emblem officially sanctioned by the local magistrate, the Qazi, to guarantee that Sankirtan parties would never be disturbed again. It was a hard-won symbol of safe devotion. And today, this exact same staff, decorated with eyes, tilak, and flower garlands, is placed right next to Paramesvari Thakura Samadhi every single year to honor his disappearance day. It's literally a direct, physical connection to a 16th-century promise of protection.
And speaking of his disappearance day, since we're currently in May 2026, we actually just passed his annual festival. According to the Vaishnava calendar, it always falls on the Purnima Tithi, the full moon day of the Vaisakha month, which was beautifully celebrated on May 1st this year. It's an incredibly vibrant time at the temple, observed with a ton of pomp and show by his family descendants who still voluntarily serve there to this very day.
Now, if you're feeling inspired to visit the temple with the one-flowering tree yourself, it's actually surprisingly accessible from Kolkata. Here's exactly how you get there. First, hop on the Tarkasore local train departing from Hara Station. Then, you'll get off at Harapal Station, which is only about a 1-hour ride. Finally, catch a trekker or bus number 10 heading straight to the area known locally as Shamerpath in Antpur. Boom, you're walking right into a 500-year-old spiritual haven that used to be a terrifying forest. I'm going to leave you with a final thought to ponder about the immense transformative power of true compassion in our own lives. If a 16th-century saint could transform a literal miscreant-filled forest and respond to an insulting, hateful prank with life-giving compassion, how might dropping our own false egos transform the legacy we leave behind? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly encourage you to reflect on that question as you go about your day. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.